All right, guys. Well, we're going to get things started. So, who we have on the call today? Obviously, as Richard just mentioned, we do have Richard Bunk. He is a data success manager here at Dataedo. I'm Patrick Hines. I'm an account executive. So, help new organizations that are just learning the tool be able to come in, get a demo, and really go through that process. Today, we're doing another Dataedo's Basics. So, we'll jump into things in a second. But Richard will change his slide and we'll go into who is Dataedo. So a lot of you guys obviously already know who Dataedo is, what we do. But for anyone that's just joining in for the first time or just discovering the tool, Dataedo is a lightweight data catalog / data governance solution. We're really focused on flexibility and customization, being very easy to implement. So making sure that organizations can spin this up in a quick manner. And from there, being able to scale it inside of their organization. Some of the key functionalities that we offer is going to be domains, data dictionary, classifications, data quality. And then today's topic is actually going to be Lineage. So I'll pass it over to Richard and we'll get things going.
All right, great. Thank you, Patrick. Welcome everybody again to this basic session number 3. As Patrick mentioned, we are going to talk about data lineage today, and specifically focusing on the power of data lineage. And by that, what I mean is Dataedo has gone to a lot of effort to show different levels of lineage and get insights that are beneficial to various groups of people there at your organizations. So here on the slide now, what I'm showing is actually in the top, we're showing end-to-end lineage at an object level. So we go all the way from there down in levels to being able to look at specific columns and understanding what happens with the data in those columns as it moves through your data systems. So that's kind of in a nutshell what the power of data lineage is. That is showing it at lots of different levels and giving insight and understanding beyond just representing that there are a bunch of objects that are related to each other in a linear fashion. Let's start with some foundational information here. There are 2 ways to depict lineage, and they're a conceptual difference, and it helps you, understanding which one we're looking at helps you understand how to interpret the lineage diagrams that you see. So the first one, of course, is focusing on the objects themselves, showing that there are objects in this lineage and data exists in these objects. And the other is to focus on the processes, showing the movement of the data through those. So let's give some examples and talk more about those. Looking at the object-focused approach, here's an example right here that everybody can relate to, and that is this linear descent from a progenitor. So of course you can see me right here, you can see my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, with the idea that the people are important. We're focused on the people and how they're related to each other. The best example I can give of this in the data world is here with DBT docs. And this is not my system. I grabbed this on the internet, but it shows that there are a whole bunch of tables and other objects in this data system, and they are related to each other. The focus is on the objects themselves, showing that there are relationships between them. In Dataedo, we take the other approach. We're focused on the processes, where we're documenting the movement of the data. We're focused on the movement of the data, and the other parts of that become attributes. So the inflows and the outflows are attributes of the processes. The very best example I can come up with for this is the idea of bus routes. So we're looking here at some bus routes here. Some of you may recognize these bus stops, but we're showing that there is movement of buses between these bus routes. It's the movement that's important. And so we're focused here on the processes and documenting them by showing the objects. This can be a conceptual challenge. I went through this myself when I first started working with Lineage, in that I was used to that DBT approach where we're looking at the objects and understanding relationships between those. And it took some mental gymnastics on my part to change my way of thinking, to focus on the processes and understanding that showing the inflows and the outflows are just attributes of documenting that process. So it's that idea. If you're to ask somebody, about a bus route, they're probably going to say the bus goes from point A to point B. They're probably not going to say the bus stops at point A and point B. That's the difference between that focus. It's the movement that's important, and that's what we're focused on here with the Dataedo system. So our definition for Dataedo, for data lineage, is the visualization of the flow or movement of data from its origin to its destination, including the sources, transformations, movements, and destinations within that landscape. Again, focused on the processes, with the other things being attributes of the processes. Again, it's a conceptual shift in how you interpret what you're looking at here, but obviously it's really hard to show on a static diagram a process other than a line like this. It's hard to demonstrate that, and so the only way we have to show that is by looking at the actual objects and saying they're attributes of this movement. Okay, so what are the uses of data lineage? There are lots of these, and I've chosen to focus on just these three. These being the investigation of the sources of data. Where does this data come from? The second one is that impact analysis, starting with sources and saying, what will happen if this data source, or object, or column, what have you, what will happen if this data source is altered? What can potentially be the impact of that downstream? And finally, understanding data flow, or how does the data move through the system? What happens with the data as it moves through the system? So it's focused on the transformations. All right, back to our bus route example. Here we are, let's say we are here at the Lambeth North bus station, and we want to know, there are a bunch of buses here. Where do they come from? The lineage shows us, or the route shows us back upstream where those buses originated and what they've done as they've come all the way down here to this station. So it allows you to see the movement by seeing, what were the objects or what are the bus stops that it went through on the way there. We can drill in even farther to this and look at it at the column level. What I've done here is the bus stops are represented by tables, and the routes are represented by columns here in this lineage. So if we, for example, look at route number 59, we know what route it took to get here. And notice the words I'm using here: came from, goes to, moved between. These are action words. We're focused on that movement of the data, or in this example, the movement of the buses. The next one is that example on a real life data example here, where we're focused on this data set, which has an outflow of the visualization. And we want to know, where does the data come from? Data exists here in this data set, and we want to know where it came from. And this lineage shows us, all of these processes show us where it came from and where it exists as it moves to this this target that we're looking at right here. The value of this, of course, is that if there's a problem with this data source set right here, if there's something wrong, it's broken, the data is incorrect, whatever, we can trace it back and find where the data came from. And again, I could drill in here and show this at the column level. I didn't because there's too many columns and you wouldn't be able to see anything here. But you could look at specific columns and know exactly where that data in that column came from. So it very quickly allows you to find out where the data comes from and understand what happened to it along that way. Now looking at impact analysis, we're starting upstream and looking downstream. So in our bus example, here we are at Hyde Park Corner, and we want to know if there is a problem with bus service at Hyde Park Corner, what stations or what stops will be affected, what bus service will be affected downstream. And you can very quickly see that. If there is a problem, a blockage of some sort at Hyde Park Corner, the bus service to these locations is potentially affected. Potentially is the key word right there, because we don't know exactly which data is going to be used in which route here, which bus route we're actually talking about. But potentially these could be affected. Again, we can drill in and we can say specifically if bus 38 is blocked at Hyde Park Corner, we know that bus service through these stops and beyond is going to be affected. It is going to be affected because now we know exactly the column, we know exactly the route, and we know what's happening there. Now, in our data example of this, I'm looking here at the customer table, and this is probably small for you, I'm sorry, just a lot of tables to look at here. But we're looking at the customer table, and we see where the data came from. But more importantly, we're looking downstream to see if there is a problem or if there is a change, if the data structure is altered, whatever the case may be, that scenario, we can look downstream and say, all of these destinations, all of these reports, these tables, data sets, they will potentially be affected. And that, again, there's that word potentially, because we don't know exactly which column we're talking about at this point. We just know all of these are dependent on that customer table and the data in it. So potentially there's changes. Again, I didn't show the picture, but you could drill in here and look at the specific column here. And, you know, if there's a change to it, you will know specifically where it goes and know how to prepare in advance for that. So that allows us to look downstream and see exactly what's going on and prepare for that or fix a problem that has arisen. Okay, our third example is this visualization and understanding of data flow. And this is where we're looking at what happens to the data as it moves through our data systems. You probably can't see it right here. There is a 4 right there indicating from this transaction table, there are 4 data sets that depend on that. So we're looking at inflows and outflows, destinations, originations, all of that to understand all of these relationships between all of these tables. This is kind of the DBT approach that I mentioned, object focus. This is an object level lineage, and we're interested in the relationships of all of these. But again, we can drill into these, and this is the exact same lineage, just expanded to show columns. And here we're looking at what's happening to the columns as they move along. We start to get more insight. So for example, up here, we're seeing what appears to be a reciprocal movement of data right there. We've got several examples of that. What's actually happening here, I have the processes hidden so you can't see it, but there is a stored procedure in here that takes the customer key, does something to it, and puts it back into that same table. So there is an internal process right there, and that's shown right there. We can see something is happening. We could expand it to show the process and understand exactly what that is. Another example is over here where we're looking and we see the unit price column, the tax rate column, and the quantity column. Together, those go through 3 different calculations to come up with these 2 columns here, tax amount and extended price. There's calculations involved. These columns are the sources, these columns are the destinations, and we know that there is something happening with that data as it moves there. So we can see and understand the relationships at the column level. So we had the object level, the column level, and we can drill in farther here. We're looking at the actual stored procedure, and we see the customer key column in the customer table is the inflow, and it is pulled into this stored procedure. Something happens to it, and it is output to the bill to customer key column in this temp table right there. We want to know what happened. We double click that flow line showing the movement, and we can see right there what transformation happened in that coalesce statement. And of course, it tells us that that movement is not direct. There was a transformation. So we can go all the way from the object level to the column level to the transformation level and get all of that information. That gives us a lot of power as we work with the data, depending on who we are. Many of you have probably been in the situation, if you're in a technical role, you've probably been in a situation where, for example, you have two reports that seem to be reporting on the same metric, and yet the numbers are different. And someone says, explain to me why these numbers are different. Well, if you didn't build the report, or maybe even if you did, but typically if you didn't build the report, you have to spend time going back and reverse engineering every stage of that data movement all the way back to the source to find the difference between the data flows between those two reports. Dataedo allows you to quickly identify the lineage, look at the column level transformations there, and understand step by step what is happening and identify where that difference happened. So it's kind of this difference of going from a 6-week process to a 6-minute process to understand and get answers to questions like that. Here's a sneak peek into 24.3, where we're adding this system map, basically, that's showing at the upper level, above the object level lineage, we're showing the movement of data through your entire data system at the system level. So you can see, what are all these systems and how do they relate to each other, so you understand that movement of data. This is an analysis tool to see if you have duplicate data sources, or if there's inappropriate relationships, or you maybe have an orphan up here. Something is being collected but not used anywhere, stuff like that. So it allows you to analyze that and get another layer of visibility into the system. Okay, so here's the question. This is probably the reason that most of you are here, is to get an answer to this question, and that is, how does Dataedo generate automatic data lineage? Well, the answer to that is, it's magic. I'm just kidding. It's not magic. The magic happens right here in the SQL parser. SQL parser is a tool built by Dataedo ourselves that does this. It works by pulling in the text of SQL scripts, and then it parses that script into information stored into a tree called a parsed tree, and that is held in memory during the import changes process. When you're working in Dataedo, that import changes process, the information from your scripts is stored in this tree temporarily, and it is used by the Dataedo engine to interpret that, pull out the process-based information, and store it all into the warehouse. So you can see here, we have all of these processes that exist in this stored procedure. It pulls them out, and those that are appropriate, right there, number 5 and number 6, where we're updating and inserting, it maps those, and it tells us what the inflows are, what the outflows are, and the transformations, and all of that other metadata about, or attributes about, that movement, process-based movement there. And you can see that is put in there and stored and then used by Dataedo Portal to render the end-to-end lineage. Now, what lineage should you expect based on your data systems? We have a lot of native connectors that have the SQL parser put into them. It's integrated in with that. So the parsing technology exists here. As far as what to expect, we have this link right here, this documentation page that links to specific pages for all of these connectors, and it tells you exactly what to expect. So for example, here we are looking at the Snowflake page, the very top part of it, and what should we expect? And based on the scenario, we're looking to see, what should you expect based on these different parts of Snowflake? What are the limitations? They're listed there. And then troubleshooting. If you're not seeing what is expected, or what you were told to expect up here, if you're not seeing that, then what can you do to troubleshoot that? And once you've gone through all that, if the next step, if you're not getting the answer you need, the next step is to reach out to me, and I will help you set up a meeting between you and metadata engineer experts who will troubleshoot with you and find out and identify where the situation is breaking down, where that process is breaking down, and create a solution to that. Now, there are cases where you simply can't do this automatically. For example, if you have a NoSQL database, then of course there's NoSQL for the parser to work with, and you are left with doing this manually. So how do you do this manual lineage? We're back to our bus example here, and I'll show you what I did here. What I did is I created a stored procedure that represents the portion of the bus route between Trafalgar Square and Aldwych. That is the stored procedure. Within that, I created processes that represent the buses that move in that section of London there. So we have processes for Route 15, Route 23, and Route 9. For each one of those, I'm showing what is the inflow and what is the outflow. And once I have that, then I map the columns that represent each of those processes. They're process-based again. Now, it's not difficult. This looks bad. It looks complex. It really isn't. All you do is you create your stored procedure, not your stored procedure, create your procedure that represents this section of the lineage. And we could call it the link of the lineage chain, if you want to call it that way. But you create a procedure, you create those processes that are involved. If there's only one, you can use the default. You don't need to create another there. But then you search over here on the right side, you can search for the inflow and the outflow objects and drag and drop them into the appropriate place here. It's just drag and drop. And once you have those there, you highlight the outflow and you use auto match to find the matching columns. In some cases, you need to do that mapping manually because there's some misunderstanding or not enough information there for this auto match to work. The cases there are when the column names change. So if we had Route 15 here and RTE 15 here, we would have to map that manually. Or if there are multiple choices based on inputs, if you had multiple inflow tables with the same column name, it wouldn't know how to match those. So there is some manual work there if the auto match doesn't work. But overall, this is an easy process. It's just tedious if you have a lot of these lineage links that you need to document. Other things you can do there, we were just on that configuration tab right there. If we move to the column mapping definition tab, we can add this other information such as the transformation and whether or not it's direct. That is this information right here that I showed earlier, this transformation script or calculation right there, and whether or not it's direct, that came from this tab right here. If this is done automatically, that will be populated automatically and will be read only because it came from the source. You can't change it, of course. But in the case of doing it manually, you can add those as needed and give another layer of understanding there. Down here, we've gone to the diagram tab, shown right there, bigger. You go to the diagram tab and you can look at each of the processes individually and make sure that the mapping is correct. So this is a place to verify your work and visually see that step before it goes to Dataedo portal to be rendered in the end-to-end lineage. All right. Another sneak peek coming in 24.3, you'll be able to identify whether lineages processes were created automatically or manually. Here we have all of these gray lines. Those were all processes and lineage created manually. Here we have the darker line. That was a manual creation. So you can easily see which is which. The value of this is as the capabilities of the lineage parser, the SQL parser, and the automatic lineage increase, you may come to a point where you need to replace one of these. You can quickly identify it and know which was which, because it will just simply add the automatic lineage to this, and you'll end up with two flows. So you'll want to know which one to delete. Also, I hate to say it, but doing it manually, there's the potential of making mistakes. And so this allows you to quickly see that and say, is there a mistake? You know, if there is, you can identify perhaps it happened in one of these manual steps right there. So that is coming in 24.3. All right, you can learn more about data lineage here. There's all of these links on this tab. These are all hot links and available for you as you download this presentation, which will be available here in just a minute. You can download this. These are all hot links, so you can use them. The purpose of downloading this is so that you can share this. You can look at it again yourself, but you can also share this with your colleagues and use this as you train your colleagues and your users. I purposely left this as a PDF document, or not a PDF, as a PowerPoint document, rather than creating a PDF, so that you can use this and alter it if needed. Whatever, you're welcome to make use of that as you work with your colleagues. But a lot of links right there that are useful. The one we mentioned before, that documentation page that shows you what's expected, that is accessed right there in that automatic data lineage link there. Okay, now we're to the questions and answers. So I have seen a bunch of those over there, and I'm going to ask Patrick to moderate these, and we'll get to your questions.
Yeah, of course. So the first one is from Vic. He asked, how do you parse Python scripts that are not stored in SQL Server?
If they are SQL based, you can bring them in. You can import SQL scripts. Working with those is a little weird. I would suggest let's have a meeting and look at specifics on that, because getting it in and integrating it into the rest of the lineage can be complicated right there. If it's not SQL based, then of course you're back to the manual question. But if it's SQL based, let's talk about it and see if we can get it integrated into the system. And then the complication there is that you need to have it to be editable in a system that is trying to do it automatically. So we have to overcome that read-only limitation there. So if that's the case and you have SQL, let's meet and let's have that metadata meeting with an engineer and figure that step out for you.
And Vic, we'll have a slide here at the end with Richard's and my contact information. So if you do need that, it'll be here shortly. The next question is going to be from Greg. He said, what are the limitations of the parser?
Well, the major limitation is it has to be SQL. That's obvious. It's SQL parser. That's the big limitation. The other limitation really is this. Well, there's two. One is, where has it been integrated yet? So obviously we are integrating it into other connectors as we go. I listed a whole bunch of them there. Go back to that slide. Listed a whole bunch here where it's already integrated. we are adding more to that all the time. So that is, of course, one limitation. The other is the parser. It's kind of a living machine, and it is continuing to grow and develop. So as we learn about the way people do things with their SQL and the way they build their stored procedures and whatnot, we learn more and we improve the parser engine. For example, recently it was brought to our attention that a lot of people, or some people, you have extensive use of parameters in their SQL scripts. And so we needed to support parameterization of the stored procedures. So we continue to learn, and by that we continue to develop the parser to be smarter and more capable. So that's a hard question to ask. What are the limitations? Basically, the big limitations are, where has it been implemented yet?
Yeah. And Greg, we can have a conversation offline as well. If there's any sources that you guys are using currently that you don't see on that automatic Lineage page, that I also just tagged you in as well. So if you do want to have that conversation offline, we can definitely set that up with an engineer. The next one would be from Jiva, asking, when can we expect data lineage for Postgres stored procedures and functions level?
I don't have the exact answer to that. You can see we have some support for Postgres right now. I would go, if I were you, I would visit this link, look at Postgres specifically, and see what the capabilities currently are. You've implied that there's some limitation there. Reach out to me, and I can ask that specific question to the metadata team. I don't have the answer to that myself. I do know that with 24.3, there are a lot of improvements to SQL parser and lineage capabilities. So maybe what you do is you wait 2 weeks, get 24.3 installed, see if you're still seeing that limitation, and then reach out to me and let's explore that. And if there's something that is super urgent that is not supported yet, we'll definitely get that on the roadmap for you.
The next one would be from Eric. Are you parsing other objects than stored procedures, queues, APIs, RPG programs?
So the big ones right now are the stored procedures and the ETL tasks. So for example, you see we have Fivetran right there. We're working with some other ETL tools, and it's based on those tasks in there right now. Again, if you have specific needs, specific places, you mentioned the APIs and those things, talk to us. We'll see what's available right now and what's coming. I know I have seen a lot of API objects existing in our data lineages, and I haven't dug in to see where those came from and what happened as far as creating those, but I have seen APIs in lineages. So there is some level of support there already.
Again, guys, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in there. I'm happy to answer those. Richard did also just put on the screen as well our contacts. So anyone new to Dataedo that's looking at the solution and needs either a demo to be able to walk through any questions that you guys may have and you currently don't have a license, feel free to contact me, patrick@dataedo.com. If you are a current customer and you want to chat with Richard more, feel free to contact him, richard@dataedo.com. Again, we are always open to chat and help you guys out. And then Eric asked, are contacts worldwide? Yes, we do have customers worldwide. So we are headquartered out of Gdańsk, Poland. So that's where most of our team is held. We do also have some team members here in the US where me and Richard are at. So we're always happy to either make connections with current customers that we work with or even introduce you to anyone possibly on the Poland side, because I know you did mention where you're based out of in Europe.
And I'll add to that. As far as I'm concerned, for training and stuff, yes, there are a lot of customers who are in Europe, Middle East, Asia, India, the Far East, different places. I have a flexible schedule, so I can do a lot to meet with you. Um, Given where I'm at, there are some places that are particularly difficult to schedule. India comes to mind. I'm sorry, Jiva, but yeah, I'm willing to work with you to try to make that work and have meetings and help you out with that training as necessary.
And that goes for same for me as well. I'm in EST, so it makes it a little bit easier to be able to reach all time zones. And I'm, again, quite flexible with that as well. So we can always set something up if needed. We do have another question from Fabrice. With new versions of Dataedo coming along, hence improvements to the parser, do we need to go through our lineage again to benefit from those improvements?
That's a great question. What you do is every time you import the metadata, import changes, that import changes function, whether you do it manually or have it on the scheduler, every time that's imported, it will revisit that lineage. And if there are improvements, it will drop them in there. So every time that runs, your lineage will be improved. Um, Best practice there is to import your changes or schedule your changes in the order of data sources, then reports, then ETL. Sources, reports, ETL. That way you get the most possibility of seeing the connections between those via the linked sources functionality and get the full end-to-end lineage. So that's another troubleshooting step. If you're not getting enough lineage, re-import in that order.
Some additional links that are contacts, I should say, that I didn't mention previously. For anyone on renewals, anything of that nature, Jonathan at Dataedo.com is going to be your main contact for that. We do also have our support link in there in general as well. Always happy to reach out from those links if needed. Thanks for joining, Eric. Gotta go. Yeah, sorry, Richard.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, pleasure to be here and talk with you all today. It's always nice to interact with you as customers, answer your questions, and have this opportunity to find out what you're thinking and help you out there.
If there is no other questions, we do have the ability to wrap up early. Again, those contacts are there on the screen. You also have them in the PowerPoint once those are sent over. I believe you guys already have them in the handouts though. So if there is, again, any additional questions, please let us know. We'll be happy to get that back to you over email. Well, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.